Hey, thanks for clicking up on Larry. Kind of a special show today as we've got some videos that are interrelated and connected in their own way. Hillary Clinton and Reverend Calvin Robinson from the UK. Now, I know you might be thinking, what do these two have in common? Well, these two videos tell a tale of not just how cancel culture is run amok here and how the progressive, aggressive left is trying to cancel people, but it goes further than that. As you'll see from this clip with Hillary Clinton. Remember, this is a woman who wanted to be president of the United States. And, well, she reveals in this conversation with Christiane Amanpour that she doesn't just want to cancel you. If you disagree with her politically, she thinks you're in a cult and you need to be deprogrammed. There's a lot more in this interview, too, that is revealing and disturbing. Let's start.
So when you look at how to go forward for the country, as you say, is there any area of coalition building that could happen? There are pragmatic Republicans, as you say. Could there be a whole new way of trying to, get legislation going and cross-party governance going?
I feel like we need to have like a glossary running here so I can define words for you, because when Christiane Amanpour, who is the celebrated journalist over there at CNN, who clearly is sort of, she could be part of the cabinet if Hillary Clinton were to be president. When she says words like pragmatic Republicans, I need you to understand what that means. Those are Republicans who do what Democrats want them to do. A pragmatic Republican is a Republican that bows to the will of the Democrats, who will knuckle under, who will cower in fear.
By
And say,
Democrats
okay,
and certain Republicans forming a coalition.
Well, you saw the number of Republicans who voted along with Democrats to keep the government open.
You see, you're a good Republican if you do what now? I'm sorry, reveal that again for us, Hillary. What did they do to make you happy?
Republicans who voted along with Democrats.
Vote with us. Vote with us, and you're okay. See, those are the only good Republicans out there. How come it never goes the other way, right? How come remember when Tulsi Gabbard was in the House of Representatives and she actually, stepped out of the Democrat bubble and said, hold on a minute, maybe we're the baddies. I might actually agree with Republicans on this. How did Hillary Clinton refer to Tulsi Gabbard then? Then she accused her of being a Russian spy.
To keep the government open. So there's clearly a common sense, sane part of the Republican caucus in the House.
Yeah, if you disagree with Hillary, if you don't vote for Democrats, you're not just wrong. We don't just have a disagreement. No. You have no common sense and you're insane. That's what she's saying. See, the only ones who are sane and common sense are the ones who vote for Democrats. And she's presenting herself as a reasonable human being here. You do see through this, right?
But I think they are intimidated. They oftentimes, say and do things which they know better than to say or do. And it will require us defeating those most extreme measures and the people who promote them in order to try to get to some common ground where people can, again, work together. That's the way it used to be. I mean, we had very strong partisans in both parties in the past, and we had very bitter battles over all kinds of things, gun control and climate change and the economy and taxes. But there wasn't this little tail of extremism wagging the.
I'm going to let you finish there, Hillary, but I'm sorry. I got to flow the flag and call bull on this. Are you going to have to bleep that? Can I say bull? It's bull. There, 3 bleeps for you. Hillary Clinton didn't just disagree with her political opponents back when she held the reins of power as First Lady of the United States. When her husband got into a scandal, she didn't just say, well, these Republicans are our political opponents, but we agree on so much and we can be reasonable. No, she literally called anyone who opposed her and her husband members of a vast right-wing conspiracy. Talk show hosts, television commentators, columnists, you, a voter who happens to think that she and her husband are corrupt or even worse, you were members of a vast right-wing conspiracy. Not patriotic Republicans who just, happen to disagree. No. And that people are still using that term. She literally invented it. And now she's trying to act like she's some sort of, George Washington-esque diplomat. Oh, gone are the good old days when we could agree to disagree. I'll say it again, bullshit.
Dog of the Republican Party as it is today.
Mhm.
And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take
I do like that she corrected herself there because, they do hand out the talking points that have been, focus group tested and everything. Make sure you use MAGA extremists, not just extremists, MAGA extremists. It's so obvious when you see it, right? They all do the same thing. She actually had to stop herself there. One more time? Oh, sure. One more time.
so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions.
You like how this works, right? Donald Trump has no credibility. Really, what's your evidence of that? Well, he's defending himself in these civil actions, these criminal actions. I'm sorry, who brought these unprecedented history-making, never before in the history of the United States kind of civil and criminal actions against Donald Trump? Partisan Democrat prosecutors. The district attorney in New York City, the attorney general in the state of New York, the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, who literally all three of them ran for office and got votes by saying, vote for me and I'll get Trump. Do you see how it works? Then they bring the charges against Donald Trump. They trot him out there. They get the mug shot. They arraign him. I'm shocked they didn't put him in cuffs. And he defends himself, of course, in court, and he's going through the process of defending himself because, he's an American citizen and has that right. And that allows this woman to say, well, he has no credibility. After all, he's defending himself against civil and criminal charges. They brought the civil and criminal charges so that they could then sit on CNN and tut and say he has no credibility. They're the ones who have no credibility. They're the ones who have broken every norm in American history. I'm getting a little worked up. Should we go back to her? Because she's about to give you the money quote. I gotta let it flow. All right, let's go back to the money quote.
Measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? Because at some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
And how do you?
And there you have it. There's actually more, and we will get to it. But here's the woman who, as I just instructed you, started with you being in a vast right-wing conspiracy. And by the way, what do we do with conspiracies in this country? That's a legal term. That's a criminal term. As we've seen from the actions of her Justice Department and her FBI and all of the high-paid lawyers that have been paid by her and her campaign over the years, what you do with a vast right-wing conspiracy is you investigate, prosecute, and jail them. But she's come a long way from that. Then when she wanted your vote in 2016 for president, she accidentally let it slip that she thinks, I believe the quote was, half of the supporters of Donald Trump are put into a basket of deplorables. See, back then it was only half, which is about, 40 million. So she went from, you're in a criminal conspiracy, you have to be investigated, prosecuted, and jailed, to 40 million of you are actually deplorable, to now you're in a cult and you have to be deprogrammed. And that's quite a progression for this woman. And I want you to watch that quote one more time, but this time, if you can, don't watch her and her terrifying delivery. I want you to watch the so-called journalist, Christiane Amanpour, who is supposed to be, some kind of reporter asking questions in a detached and unbiased way. Watch her. Watch Christiane Amanpour.
Because at some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
It's funny. She thinks it's funny. She doesn't push back. She doesn't challenge. She doesn't say, wait, isn't that a little extreme? Oh, she was just joking. Sure she was. Just like that whole Russian collusion thing was just a joke.
And how do you do that? Because you said you have to defeat them by defeating them.
By the way, she just had the former Secretary of State, a former U.S. Senator, a former First Lady, and a woman who came this close, God forbid, from being the President of the United States, saying that half of the country is in a cult and needs to be deprogrammed. And her only question is, okay, so how do we go about doing this? What's the plan? I'm on board. Have you worked it out yet?
leader. Their leader
Right.
is Donald Trump. Even you have said that you expect him to be the Republican nominee. How does this change at all?
At this point, I think, sadly, he will still likely be the nominee, and we have to defeat him. And we have to defeat those who are the election deniers, as we did in 2020 and 2022.
But what about the election deniers in 2016? Led by her. Election deniers. I wish Christiane Amanpour would have jumped in there. See, again, this is where you actually need a journalist who actually wants to get answers to questions and actually interested in delivering to the American people what they want, and isn't a cheerleader and on the side of the person she's interviewing, but somebody who actually smells through the crap. What Christiane Amanpour should have said, oh, when you say election denier, does that mean that you no longer deny the 2016 results? Does that mean you don't think that there was a conspiracy with Vladimir Putin and collusion between the Trump campaign? Have you accepted the results of that election? It would be great to hear that answer if only there were a journalist in the room during this interview.
And we have to, just be smarter about how we are trying to empower the right people inside the Republican Party.
Empower the right people within the Republican Party. If you're a Republican, please, are you paying attention right now? Are you seeing what's going on? And also, by the way, real quick, the hypocrisy here. Do you realize that the Democrats, through their own party apparatus, through their fundraising and through their political action committees that are completely unregulated and no one knows how much money is going in, dark money, Democrats are the masters of dark money. For the last several election cycles, either the 2018 midterms, the 2020 elections, and the 2022 election cycles, the midterm cycles, the Democrats have funneled millions and millions and millions of dollars into primary campaigns to help support Trump-aligned candidates during the primary, so that the most Trump-favored candidates win a primary and then lose the general election. They're actually supporting those Republicans in the primary so that it's easier for a Democrat to win in the general. So when she says we need to make sure that we help support the right kind of Republicans, well, they're doing the opposite. They actually don't want a, let's say, more electable Republican to win in a primary race because they might beat the Democrat. That's a fact.
How we are trying to empower the right people inside the Republican Party. Nancy Pelosi had a majority of 5 votes when she was Speaker. Kevin McCarthy had a majority of 5 votes. Nancy Pelosi passed consequential legislation, and she clearly had members within her caucus who, ranged across a spectrum of political beliefs and ideology, and she kept everybody together, and she kept everybody focused on the future. Mm-hmm. He couldn't do that.
Just so you know, if the next Republican speaker, whoever he may be, and it looks like it's going to be a man, if he is able to take his small 4 or 5 seat majority and pass legislation, Hillary Clinton will be the first one to say, he rules with an iron fist. He's an authoritarian. If you're a Republican and you disagree with him, you don't have a role in the party. I mean, that's literally what Nancy Pelosi is. I admire it, by the way. I wish we had speakers like that. But to suggest that that's some laudable thing from her, that this is heads I win, tails you lose when it comes to her criticism of Republicans.
And so he paid a price, but more importantly, the country paid a price.
And so,
wait, how is the country paid a price? Number one. Number two, he paid a price because he worked with Democrats. This is This is Hillary Clinton lamenting the state of our country right now because Kevin McCarthy couldn't get Republicans in line and rule with an iron fist. Understand where she's gone in the last 5 minutes of this interview. She started by saying we used to work together and we used to be able to, put aside our differences and get things done. That's literally what Kevin McCarthy did. By getting things done, working with Democrats, and that's why he was ousted. And now she's criticizing him because he got ousted and couldn't keep his Republicans in line. Explain it to me.
When you see another matchup between potentially Trump and President Biden. What goes through your mind? And particularly, how do you process that this person who defeated you back in 2016 is still at it, given all that you've said, 91 indictments, you know, civil fraud, sexual transgressions according to the courts? How is this still happening?
It's
The answer, by the way, and if you were actually, you know, a Native American and said process the right way and call it process, you would understand that the reason that this keeps happening is because Donald Trump wins votes. You see, all this criticism about Donald Trump and the indictments and all the things that they say about him, they're never coming to grips with the fact that he actually gets votes. People want him. People vote for him. So many so that this woman is being interviewed as a loser in a presidential election instead of actually a former president. Notice how they never confront that. I mean, the only moment they come close to confronting it is you're in a cult and you have to be deprogrammed.
It's a classic tale of an authoritarian populist who really has a grip on the emotional, psychological needs and desires of a portion of the population. And the base of the Republican Party, for whatever combination of reasons, and it is emotional and psychological, sees in him someone who speaks for them. And they are determined that they will continue to vote for him, attend his rallies, wear his merchandise, because for whatever reason, he and his very negative, nasty form of politics resonates with them. Maybe they don't like migrants. Maybe they don't like gay people or Black people or the woman who got the promotion at work they didn't get. Whatever the reason, Make America Great Again was a bid for nostalgia, to return to a place where, people could be in charge of their lives, feel empowered, say what they want, insult whoever came in their way. And that was really attractive.
Let me just translate for you. Again, we need a glossary here. Hillary Clinton just said that if you don't oppose Donald Trump, and God forbid even support him or vote for him, it's because you are a psychological basket case and are only motivated out of hate. And the woman who just a few moments ago said that you are in a cult and need to be deprogrammed, and earlier called you deplorable, and earlier said that you were a member of a vast right-wing conspiracy, she thinks that Donald Trump and you are very negative. Unlike the sunny side of the street positive outlook Hillary Clinton brings to the table.
To a significant portion of the Republican base. So it is like a cult. And somebody has to break the break that momentum.
Well, it sure ain't going to be you, Hillary, because you will never be president. Although, I don't know. That looks like a new pantsuit to me. And it could be she's lining herself up to step in when Joe Biden either is forced from office or forced from the ticket because of his lack of mental abilities or, because of all the indictments that he might be facing, or certainly his son. I think we've had enough Hillary for a bit, right? Let's turn to a man of the cloth, shall we? Calvin Robinson is not only a Anglican reverend in the United Kingdom, he is also a political commentator. And up until just a few moments ago, he had a television show on GB in Great Britain. You've got your BBC, you got your Channel 4, you got your ITV. They don't have a whole lot of choice for media in the UK because they don't have a thing called the First Amendment. We won that war. But they had just launched recently a thing called GBTV, Great Britain TV, and it was sort of like a conservative, like a Newsmax situation, right? Because Sky News, which is really owned by the Murdoch family, which is their version of Fox, well, as many consumers of news here in America would agree, is not quite conservative enough for them. They're not happy with Sky News. So there was a window to launch a brand new channel. It's called GBTV, and they set themselves up as the voice of the people and populist, and Nigel Farage was on it. And I'll just let Calvin Robinson here explain what's going on, because he just got fired by GBTV, and why he got fired actually works perfectly in tandem with the sentiments you just heard from Hillary Clinton. They don't just want to cancel you. They don't want to just silence you. They want to destroy you.
Hello, my name is the Reverend Calvin Robinson. Until recently, I was a TV presenter and radio presenter on GB News, the so-called home of free speech. No, not that speech. I am an Anglican minister. I'm deacon in charge of Christ Church Halsden. And I want to share some news with you. I have just been dismissed from my role at GB News following a suspension.
You're going to hear the story here, but I just want to preface it by saying there is something so incredibly emotionally and psychologically disorienting to see a man wearing a clerical collar explain that he has been fired for hate speech. Just think about that for a minute. And as you'll hear in a moment, the hate speech in question are things like, traditional Christian doctrine that he proposed, supported, and promoted, which, last I checked, actually goes along with the job description of wearing that little collar. Every time I see Reverend Robinson explain this story and speak out against the totalitarian assault that he's been faced when he's wearing his collar, I freak out, because they're trying to criminalize the faith.
Where to begin? I'm sorry, I'm in shock. I do want to share this news with you, but I am absolutely in shock that this has happened. And I think I need to go back to the beginning, which is actually the case of Mark Stein, which is where all of this began. Internally at the company, we were propagandized. We were told this was Mark Stein's fault, and that actually he didn't play the game, and that it's okay to say you believe something as long as you get someone else to challenge you. Or you could say, I believe X, Y, and Z. Other people believe this.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, the British say Z instead of Z, but you get that. Secondly, a little backstory. Mark Stein was fired from GBTV about a year ago because he questioned the vaccine, and he had a series of episodes of his television show where he was questioning not only the efficacy of the vaccine, but actually also whether there were some damage caused by the vaccine. It's actually a very similar story. Ironically, Mark Stein used to fill in for Tucker Carlson on Fox News Channel, you'll remember. Kind of some parallels there between the two stories.
Or in the case of Mark Stein, what they told us is that he presented his opinion as fact without leaving it open to other interpretation. And they told us that he brought it on himself, and he brought it on the station, and he refused to cooperate with the station. And that's why they had to get rid of him. That there and then was the line. That was the red flag that we all ignored. I mean, I did speak out publicly as much as I could at the time, but I should have totally stepped forward and put my head above the parapet. I should have said, no, this is wrong. Something's not right here. They tried to shift the blame to Ofcom. I do think Ofcom is a problem.
Ofcom is a government agency in the UK that is sort of like the FCC, but way more aggressive and way more powerful because, again, the lack of First Amendment over there. So when you hear him relate to that, basically it's a government agency that does control speech, at least broadcast speech, in their own way. One other quick aside, and this might get deleted and edited out, but I do kind of love the fact that this guy is an Anglican minister, and over his shoulder, he's got an icon of the Virgin Mary with the baby Jesus and Queen Elizabeth II. Is there anything more British than this shot right here? All right, I digress, but it's just, it brings me joy.
They are a quango of the government at arm's length, and they do interfere over the COVID situation. They changed their rules to journalists must not question or undermine public health bodies. Not just must not undermine public health bodies, but must not question or undermine public health bodies. That, again, was alarm bells. And I have spoken about this on air. So we should have stood up for Mark. All of us should have done, as a community, as a GB News community. Some people did, very few did. But that was the start, because once they got rid of him, they realized they could get rid of any of us. Later, they got rid of a number of presenters, but one in particular, who I really like. I didn't realize why she'd left until this week, and the papers have reported that she was paid out with a handsome 5-figure settlement because she was sexually harassed by a senior member of management. Now, had I known that, I would have left immediately.
Apparently, the similarities to certain escapades at conservative cable news stations here in the States don't end with, well, I'll just...
That's disgusting. First of all, it's disgusting that sexual harassment is happening from management to employees.
Seriously, what is it with conservative media outlets and sexual harassment? Can we get past this, please? We need to speak out more about anything that we might see at the workplace. It really does drive me nuts. We're the gentlemen in the room. We should be. We're the ones who actually are chivalrous and want to treat women as women and want to protect their babies in the womb. Guys, God, be a man, like a real man.
But secondly, that the board seemed to have signed off on a 5-figure settlement rather than sacking him there and then. But they will sack other people, and we'll get to that. There's a lot going on here in this story of what's happening at GB News. One of the major stakeholders is looking to purchase the Daily Telegraph. Now, when you're looking to purchase a big, reputable newspaper company like that, your reputation is taken into consideration. So there cannot be anything, no question marks next to your name. There cannot be any edgy situations, which is why, one of the reasons why I think people like myself and Lawrence Fox and Dan Wootton have been edged out. But we are not the first, and we will not be the last. In the news recently, and I found out through the papers, I didn't find out through my management or any conversations with anyone, but they were trying to push us out anyway. Me and Neil Fox and a couple of others, they were going to take us off of broadcast, and they were going to paint it as, this is how we're going to enable free speech, because we'll take them off the network and put them online, and then they're free to say what they want, forgetting, first of all, that Ofcom are going to have regulatory powers of the internet too very soon, because the online safety bill passed. But also, this wasn't a win for free speech. This was a way to shut us down and to get rid of the people who are calling themselves freedom fighters and fighting for the truth, and just to become more mainstream and more reasonable and more reputable, so to speak. This has been a pattern. I fought many fights while I've been there. And I've always said, this is a platform that I've been gifted to do God's work. It's always been a mission for me. It's never a career objective. It's never been a goal for me to become a TV presenter or anything like that. This has been a platform that I've been gifted to use as best as I could. I haven't always been able to do that. I wanted to get Katie Hopkins on my show months ago. I got it approved by the CEO, and I still wasn't able to do it. I've tried and fought many fights. Most of them I have won. Many I haven't won. I managed to talk about abortion and fight for the sanctity of life. A lot of battles to get those conversations on air. A lot of battles. I talked about marriage and how important marriage is, and how it's between one man and one woman, and sex outside of marriage is fornication. That's sinful. Having that conversation on air should be considered normal. But Christian views, traditional British views, our values are seen as bigoted. And I'm not just talking about people who hate the channel on the hard left. I'm talking about people within the channel. There is a division. There's a civil war going on at GB News. I came off air after discussing marriage to hear people, producers, floor managers, saying, you can't say it's sin, it's legal. First of all, showing that they don't understand what sin means. But second of all, showing that...
Yeah, I do like that aside. It's like, oh, it's legal, so it can't be sinful. Oh, boy, are we all damned to hell if that's the case, number one. But number two, think about this for a second. You're a so-called conservative media outlet. You hire an Anglican minister to be a presenter on your channel, and specifically to talk about his Christian... I mean, what do you think he's going to talk about? He's a minister. He's going to talk about his Christian values and his Christian beliefs and Christian principles that, by the way, predate Great Britain, that are scripturally bound. And by the way, last I checked, we keep saying the Anglican Church. It's the Church of England. We all just saw the coronation of King Chuck over there. Not only do they make him the monarch, but he's also the head of the Church of England. These are supposed to be the Christian beliefs and values and principles and doctrines that are the official line of the monarchy, the head of state in England. And you hire this guy to comment on these and talk about the cultural problems in our society, shot through the lens of traditional Christian principles and values, and he's got to beg to go on the air and talk about traditional marriage, beg to talk about abortion and issues like that, and then get guff from some mealy-mouthed network executive when he gets off the air? What's going on here? And it really does, I hope it should, give you pause when you realize how these principles and how these beliefs and standards are under assault, even within organizations. And if I could take a quick moment to plug Town Hall VIP, I mean, if you like our sites, I think you do, and you like our content, from townhall.com to Hot Air to PJ Media to Red State to Twitchy to Bearing Arms, you know, we're under pressure, not thankfully from our corporation that owns us, but we're under pressure from social media outlets that support and present our servers and give access to our content. And the only way we can keep going the way the crisis is right now, with pressure on advertisers and companies that send ads to our site, is to have a robust subscription service like our VIP program. This is the reason why it was launched, so that we could be free of this kind of pressure and continue to present our stories, your stories, the stories that you care most about and want to be able to keep reading. The only way we keep doing that is through our VIP program. The list of stories that we've presented that have been demonetized by these companies. Take a look at the latest video from my colleague Katie Pavlich here at Town Hall, so you can see as she lays it out. It's chilling. Absolutely chilling. And we present this to you and Mr. Robinson's lament here because it is worldwide and it's all in one direction. It's aimed at us. It's aimed at us.
They don't believe in free speech. And there were a lot of people there that hate the presenters. And there are two types of presenters at GB News. There are the truth seekers, the freedom fighters, and there are the professional presenters. You know, they're in it for TV because they've been in it for TV for a long time. That's fine. That's, you know, people have different objectives in life. However, the more mainstream ones are accepted, and the freedom fighters are literally hated by a lot of people. And, you know, the Express and a few other papers have printed stories saying that Dan's own team have been against him recently. Came as no surprise to me, because people literally hate what we're trying to do. A lot of people work there because they want to get their foot into the industry, and either they've come from Sky or BBC, or they're going to end up back at Sky and BBC. It's a great shame. I said to the CEO, I said to the management a long time ago that we should be recruiting people that believe in free speech, believe in our shared mission goals, that share our ideology, to put it frankly, and want to come along with us on this journey, want to help us on this journey, not people who are going to battle us and obstruct us all the way. But perhaps that's part of the thing. Perhaps this all along has been some kind of controlled opposition. When we see senior presenters at Conservative Party conference, and we hear that they are being allowed into the Conservative Party finally, and that potentially they could become the next leader of the party. At the same time as we hear senior stakeholders are buying the Daily Telegraph, so they'll own the Telegraph and GB News. They'll pretty much own the centre right. And of course, all the dissidents on the right go on GB News because there's nowhere else left to go. So is this a way of controlling the right, controlling the dissidents, and shaping the future of the Conservative Party in order to shape the future of the country? Is there something bigger going on here?
Now, that's a really provocative idea, and it does give one pause. So we've set up this, free speech bastion over here. We're the dissidents. We're the people on the right who aren't acceptable over on the BBC. We're the ones who have these dangerous ideas. So they're all going to be here on GBTV. It's a safe haven. It's your own secret little island. You can go ahead and speak your mind and say whatever you want. And then one by one, systematically, they get canceled there as well. They get shut down. They get put down. Is that a way of controlling the opposition in a really insidious way to make it look like, oh no, this is where you're supposed to be. You can say whatever you want here, and then as you get removed there, it's like, oh, we've got everybody in one place. Now we just got to get rid of them one by one there, and they've got nowhere else to go.
That's a question I want to know. But all this comes down to essentially, Lawrence Fox said something crass on air. I'm a very good friend of Lawrence's. I see him as a brother. I told him straight that, you shouldn't.
Lawrence Fox is an actor in England. In fact, if you saw the fantastic film called My Son Hunter, produced over at Breitbart produced the My Son Hunter film. It's a phenomenal telling of the Hunter Biden story in a really artistic way. Lawrence Fox plays Hunter Biden in that movie. He's a great actor, and he's an outspoken conservative voice in Great Britain. And he said a really, really offensive joke about a woman on the air. And Calvin Robinson is telling the story where he actually, as I just said earlier, can we step up and be real men? Calvin Robinson was that real man. He stepped up and he said, that's crass. It's despicable. And Lawrence Fox apologized. That's not enough. See, apologizing isn't enough. As soon as you apologize, in fact, things get worse these days.
I said that. That's all that should have been. That's all that conversation should have been. Maybe an apology. And he did apologize. But Dan Wootton was the host of the show, and, he was flustered in the moment, didn't challenge him as heavily as he could have challenged him. So he gets suspended too. They both get suspended. Of course, it's more difficult for them to fire Dan because he's on a long-term contract, which me and Lawrence aren't on because we haven't been on full-time contracts as long as Dan. Anyway, that's beside the point. Dan helped build this station, literally, blood, sweat, and tears. And we've all been around. I was freelance at the beginning, but I've been around since before launch. I've appeared on Dan's show more than anyone else. I think the only other person who's been on more than me is Dawn Neeson, and that's because she hosted. But we've been around and we put in the work to make this station what it is because we believe in it. We believed in it. We believed in what we thought was the mission. Now, I stood up for Dan and Lawrence. I stood up for free speech. I stood up for what I think GB News is supposed to be. I stood up for our viewers, who are the silent majority and who have been ignored by the metropolitan liberal elite of the mainstream media and the establishment and the politicians, and did feel like GB News was a home for them. I don't want them to be politically homeless and media homeless at the same time. But it looks like that's what's happening at the moment. And it's sad. Excuse me, I need to calm down. I try to stand up for what we believe in, for our principles. I try to provide some critical challenge to our leadership. And they saw it as bringing the station into disrepute. I said, well, I think their actions are what are bringing the station into disrepute. Anyway, they've now fired me. I believe the project is doomed, not because they fired me, but because it shows that the direction they're heading is not the direction that me, Lawrence, and Dan, and a few others thought it was heading in.
Reverend Robinson goes on to talk about how this is now affecting him. He's got his parish that he still has to work with and keep supported. And if you know anything about the Anglican Church right now in England, parishes are in trouble. The numbers are way down. This was a way for him to have money for himself and also for his parish. He put out his information for his Substack and a GoFundMe and such because he's been fired. He's fired because he spoke up and criticized management, and he's done. And I just want to emphasize the fact that look at this guy. Look at his, literally wearing a clerical collar. Was harassed for supporting and promoting and what's the word I'm looking for? Preaching conservative values and conservative principles and basic Christian fundamental doctrine that we've all agreed on in Western civilization for centuries. And clearly, look at his delivery. This is not some fire-breathing, radical, desk-pounding, screaming, red-in-the-face kind of right-wing conservative. And that's kind of the point. You notice this very calm and very sort of deliberate and erudite delivery, and then he had to stop himself and say, I have to calm down. I mean, dude, you're super calm, I promise. You should watch me sometimes. But that's the point. You see, your political opponents in this country and clearly around the world, they'll tell you that all you screaming right-wingers, all of you desk-pounding, chest-thumping, red-in-the-face, bulging veins, you're the problem, you're insane, you're terrible, we can't have you, whether it's Rush or Tucker or Sean or fill in the blank. You're just awful, you're constant, you're just an angry, horrible, racist xenophobe. Does Reverend Robinson look angry to you? Does he look like a basket case? Does he look like he's screaming with veins bulging? No, he's an incredibly intelligent, articulate, well-read, principled man who makes an effective argument with unassailable logic and reason. That's why they had to cancel him. That's why they had to fire him. That's why his voice can't be heard, because he makes sense. Think about the people they're opposed to now. You know, not those fire-breathing crazy radicals. They're opposed to Reverend Robinson. They're opposed to Jordan Peterson. They're opposed to Matt Walsh, who, you know, when he gets excited, I think that his beard gets a little fluffier. They're opposed to Ben Shapiro, who was like everybody's favorite little nerdy cousin. They're opposed to Tucker Carlson, whose claim to fame was wearing a bow tie for decades. They fear logic and reason. They fear an articulate opponent to their ideas. They fear that because they can't really oppose them. The only way they can win is to silence them. All right, that's it for today. Hey, thanks for walking through this journey with me on these 2 videos. I know it might have been a long haul, but I think that we made our point. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. I'm Larry O'Connor. Please like and subscribe, and even more importantly, share this. That makes such a difference for us. No matter where you're watching us, I know there's a share button. So share away, and we'll see you.